Herkese merhaba. Benim adım Eray Atlas. OTT Bilişim CTO'suyum. 27 Temmuz'da başlattığımız Sakarya Üniversitesi Bilgisayar Mühendisliği Ulusal TESTBED Merkezi'ndeki siber güvenlik çalıştayının artık sonlarına geldik. Ve bu anlamda değerli katılımcılar ve gözlemcilerin de olduğu bir sunumu sizlerle paylaşmak için burada toplanmış bulunuyoruz. İlk etapta çalıştayla ilgili bilgi vermek gerekirse burada ciddi bir elektrik şebekesi ve su şebekesi platformları bulunuyor. İçerisinde çok değişik endüstriyel ekipmanlarla oluşturulmuş gerçek bir simülasyon ortamı, gerçek hayattan kesit alınarak yapılmış bir enerji şebekesi ve örneklendirilmiş bir su şebekesi ile burada siber güvenlik çalıştayında mavi takım ekiplerimiz ve kırmızı takım ekiplerimizle buradaki siber güvenlik çalıştayımızı icra ettik. Bu çalıştayda mavi takım ekiplerimizden Garland Teknoloji ve Skadefens IDS çözümü olarak birlikte çalışma gerçekleştirirken kırmızı takım ekiplerimizden ise siber atak simülasyon platformu olarak kullandığımız SafeBridge Bus platformu çözümünü beraberinde de gizli gözlemcilerimizle Türkiye'de önemli işler yapan bu firmalarla buradaki platformun siber güvenliğin ölçümlerini yaparak neler elde edebiliyoruz? Ne gibi atakları, sofistike gelişmiş atakları yaparken SCADA bunları nasıl yakalıyor, bunları nasıl tespit ediyor, derinlemesine güvenliğini nasıl gösteriyor ve buradaki tüm hareketleri nasıl yakaladığını göstermek üzere bir çalışmaya başladık. 27 Temmuz itibariyle. 27 Temmuz'da su şebekesiyle ilgili değerli Sakarya Üniversitesi Bilgisayar Mühendisliği öğretim üyesi Profesör Doktor İbrahim Özçelik hocamızdan briefing olarak su şebekesi ve elektrik şebekesiyle ilgili detaylı bilgiler aldık. Platformların nasıl çalıştığını, oradaki proseslerin nasıl gerçekleştiğini detaylıca dinledikten sonra birlikte iş ortaklarımızla katıldığı bu çalışma platformunun ilerleyen zamanlarda topolojik olarak incelemesini yaptık ve bu incelemeler sonrasında da buralarda nasıl cihazlarımızı konumlandıracağımızın mimari tasarımlarını yaparak hem networksel çalışmalar içerisinde bulunduk hem de fiziki olarak ekipmanlarımızı getirdik. Hocamızla beraber yaptığımız değerlendirmeler sonrasında TAP çözümlerini konumlandırarak Garland'ın TAP çözümlerini burada konumlandırdık. Ve buradaki su şebekesinden ve elektrik şebekesindeki hem SCADA kontrol merkezinden hem de sahadaki trafo merkezleri ve su şebekesindeki terfi noktalarından çeşitli kritik yerlerdeki trafikleri HMI, PLC, RTU, DCS gibi kritik trafikleri dinleyecek şekilde TAP çözümlerimizi konumlandırdık. Ve bu TAP çözümlerini konumlandıktan sonra da bu trafikleri %100 bir şekilde derinlemesine okuyarak bizim Network Packet Broker cihazımıza getirdik. Network Packet Broker cihazımızda da bunları bütünleşik bir şekilde hem su şebekesi hem de enerji şebekesi trafiklerini ayrı ayrı SCADA Fence platformlarına göndererek burada siber analizlerine başladık. Sonuçta tesisteki konumlandırmamızı da tamamladıktan sonra sırada SafeBridge kurulumlarına başladık. Yurt dışından SafeBridge ekipleriyle beraber SafeBridge'in OT tarafını burada icra ettik. Ortama SafeBridge konsollarını on-prem koyduk. Simülatörlerini ilgili her bir burada segmente edilmiş alanlara, trafo merkezlerin içerisine, SCADA merkezlerin içerisine konumlandırdık. Ve bu şekilde artık hazır hale geldikten sonra da gözlemcilerimiz de yavaş yavaş ekipleriyle beraber buraya gelerek bazıları uzaktan bazıları da yerinde bu siber ataklarını OT'ye yönelik, endüstriyel kritik sistemlere yönelik saldırılarını yapmaya başladılar. Biz de bu sırada yurt dışındaki Blue Team ekiplerimizle beraber, kendi mavi takım ekiplerimizle beraber SCADA Fence üzerinde hem su şebekesine hem de enerji şebekesine doğru yapılan bu saldırıları an ve an izlemeye başladık ve gördük ki yapılan çok değişik, sofistike, karmaşık OT saldırılarını biz TAP çözümlerinin paket görünürlük başarısı sayesinde ve SCADA Fence'in derinlemesine analizi sayesinde an ve an görebiliyoruz ve bunlar günlerce devam etti. Planlı bir şekilde yapılan bu saldırıları biz mavi takım ekipleri olarak izledik ve gözlemledik. Öncelikle bu çalıştaya destek veren Sakarya Üniversitesi Bilgisayar Mühendisliği Bölümü İbrahim Özçelik hocamızın ve ekibine çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Bize çok değerli zamanlarını ayırdılar. Ve akabinde iş ortaklarımızla beraber yaptığımız çalışmalar için kendilerine teşekkür ediyoruz. Kanal seviyesinde bizi destekleyen SCADA Fence, SafeBridge ve Garland Teknoloji'ye ve Salvador Teknoloji'ye çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Akabinde de observer olarak, gözlemci olarak burada bulunan gizli gözlemcilerimize de teşekkürlerimizi iletiyorum. Sakarya Üniversitesi'ndeki session'ımız devam ediyor. Şimdi ilk konuğumuzu ağırlayacağız. Ska Defense ekibinden Pazarlama Başkan Yardımcısı Michael Yavuşua bizimle. Ska Defense ekibiyle oldukça güzel bir çalışmanın sonuçlarını görüşüyor olacağız. Öncelikle ben Ska Defense ekibine çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Burada Sayın CEO Elat Binmayer eşliğindeki tüm ekibe teşekkürlerimi sunarım. Ve özellikle de ekip içerisinde mavi takım çalışmalarında bize olağanüstü destek gösteren Alex, kendisine Alex diye çok teşekkürlerimi sunarak sözü Michael'a vereceğim. Hello Michael, you welcome.
Hello Eray, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for participating in the Critical Infrastructure National TESTBED Center workshop at Sakarya University. I am also at the facility right now. You know, we conclude a very productive workshop. We are coming to the end. Thank you for joining us. I want to say a big thank to you. You're welcome again. And Ska Defense team, we worked very hard and closely. Thank you for participating in this workshop, first of all. If you are ready, let's start to listen you. And my first question is coming. What are the consequences of cyber attack on critical infrastructure, such as water, energy, chemicals, and nuclear?
Very good. So first of all, thank you very much, Eray. Thank you to the team. And of course, thank you to everyone who was part of this wonderful event. It was a very educational event, I'm sure, for all the sides that were connected. Not only that, I was very involved in this whole workshop from the beginning all the way until the end. So there are plenty of insights that we learned from this event. But in order to answer your question, consequences of a cyber attack on critical infrastructure. So critical infrastructure is a little bit different than other types of cybersecurity, because again, these are things that the nation uses in order to protect its civilians. So think about an attacker gaining access to systems and networks of things that you need to keep the civilians safe, like water, right? If an attacker goes ahead and starts changing the level of chemicals inside the water, there are people who can drink water that's unsafe. And it's not just limited to water. Talk about energy, right? If an attacker is able to disable a power grid, people can lose the heat inside their homes. People can lose power. Not everyone has generators. Not every country is so advanced that they have all these backups, and that can cause a lot of issues with there. And if you want to speak about nuclear, obviously that's a whole other story. Obviously, we've seen Chernobyl, and it's obviously not something that we want to remember anytime again in the near future. So again, these are very sensitive networks. They're very delicate. They're all about keeping the civilians safe, and to have an attacker having those controls could be devastating for critical infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. As you know, from the beginning up to now, your team is completely with us the full week. We are making blue team activities, and Alex, Moshe, and Yoav always with us. So in this critical infrastructure, during the red teamings of our hidden observers, I cannot share their names, but they have great attack scenarios they have accomplished, and also we use the Safe Bridge platform and make some attacks on the critical infrastructures for water facility and energy facility. So Ska Defense completely catch them. We see it on the screens, so it's amazing. So we, as a conclusion, SCA Defense is really listening the all network completely and giving the whole details of cybersecurity manners. We can see and understand everything what's going inside. My second question is, what does SCA Defense do as an organization? Can you tell us, please?
Sure. I think you covered on a lot of it on your own, but
you.
in general, the reason that SCA Defense exists is to keep civilians safe. And we work with many organizations in critical infrastructure and in manufacturing in order to make sure that everything is running safe, also for the workers and also for the products and also for the end users. So ultimately, when you talk about industrial control systems, these are systems that are a little bit more traditional. Maybe they're a little bit older, a little bit more aging than traditional IT infrastructure. And sometimes it's difficult to get visibility into those networks, right? They're using older protocols, they're communicating with one another. There's a lot of processes that are going through, and you cannot usually gain visibility into these networks, because if you try using traditional IT tools into an industrial network, you can actually cause more harm, maybe even the same exact harm as an attacker. And so what we needed to do, we needed to think a little bit outside the box and think, how can we provide visibility into those industrial control systems without having, without actively affecting them. So we came up with a passive solution. What we do is we're able to listen in to all the network traffic and to present all that in a very clean and detailed manner, so that asset owners are able to see exactly what's happening in their network. It's the best way to describe it is just like turning on a light switch. All of a sudden you can see everything. You see all the devices that you have. You see all the different network segments. You see whom is communicating with whom. You see which protocols are being used. And ultimately you're able to determine not only if there is an attack on the network, but if there is any anomalous behavior on the network, if anything is set up incorrectly. Many times when people use the SCA Defense platform, they don't only use them whenever there is an attack in their network, they use them in their day-to-day to understand, is there someone doing maintenance on our servers? Are there third parties connecting to the network? Is everything set up properly? How is our segmentation looking like? And of course, with all that benefits, whenever there is an attack, it's very easy to pinpoint the location of the attackers, and they're able to stop them before a major attack happens. So one of the reasons why we participated in this exercise is in order to help not only OTD Bilişim, but also to the unnamed observers. They wanted to see if they run specific attacks on industrial networks, which are usually impossible to detect. They wanted to see if they're able to have that visibility through the platform. And we'll touch a little bit more into that, but spoilers, we caught everything.
Yeah. First of all, the attacks you mentioned, yes, our unnamed observers, red teams, they have very powerful on this side. So they really make a sophisticated OT attacks. I really watch them, and when they attack to the platform, we see the SCA Defense is showing the attacks in very deeply, because SCA Defense does the job correctly. And also not only the SCA Defense, also the top solutions is also here important. All together, they are making a blue teaming, and we are seeing every activity on the network. So visibility is important, and SCA Defense make it easier. İkinci konuğumuz Garland Teknoloji'den Ross Green. Kendisi Garland Teknoloji İMEA Bölgesi Satış Direktörü ve kendisinden buradaki çalıştayla ilgili sorularımızı cevaplamasını isteyeceğiz. Öncelikle bu çalıştayda TAP çözümlerinin öneminden bahsetmiştim giriş konuşmamda. Çok detaylı paket görünürlüğü elde etmek açısından basit, pratik ve tak çalıştır mantığıyla ve unutacağımız cihazlar. Ama çok değerli cihazlar ve hızlı bir şekilde sonuca gitmemizi hızlandıran cihazlar. O sebeple paket görünürlüğü çözümü olarak çok derinlemesine iş yapan bu çözümlerin vendor'ıyla sizleri buluşturuyorum. Hello Rose, welcome. Thank you for participating in the Critical Infrastructure National TESTBED Center workshop at Sakarya University. You know, we come to the end of the workshop. For about 1 month, we worked on this workshop with the teams, and our blue team Garland is also in our blue team in our blue team. So thank you for supporting us and giving your special times for technical and for all marketing materials. Rose, as you know, when we go to the facilities, and even though in this Sakarya University facility, the environment has lots of industrial switch brands they are using. So they are doing important duties, but most of them are having mirror and span port functionality. It is easy to use them, these features, but why should you think that they should use taps regarding to switches?
So first and foremost, it's recognized industry best practice to use taps, and there's several reasons for that. Let's take the word SPAN. SPAN stands for Switch Port Analyzer. And as that name suggests, it was a switch function designed for troubleshooting, not continual security monitoring purposes. Many switch vendors state in their manuals that SPAN ports may drop packets. Others, such as Honeywell, state that they are not allowed to be used for monitoring purposes. Sometimes you'll find that SPAN ports are simply not available. A lot of old switching for architectures do not have SPAN. Sometimes there's no available ports on a switch. You then have to consider the fact that you have to configure a SPAN port. So configuring a SPAN port means making configuration changes, and in some instances you need to do patches to a switch device that may not have been touched for years. There's an element of risk in terms of opening up a SPAN port. You also have to remember that a SPAN port is actually a switch port, which is an integral part of the network. It also can receive as well as transmit data. Opening a SPAN port opens a potential vulnerability, as data can be directed back into a network through it. The other consideration, maybe not so much from a security point of view, but from a network monitoring point of view, is that SPAN ports will only pass healthy packets. And indeed, in some instances, there are some protocols that are not passed on a SPAN port. Only a tap will mirror all packets, including errors. In terms of performance, there's always a concern around support performance when using SPAN ports. The architecture of switches in OT environments is often based upon a shared memory approach. So when you're doing a simple one-to-one mirroring of data, yep, that can be fine. But when you're trying to mirror multiple ports out of a single SPAN port, then you can very quickly get into an oversubscription situation, and packets will be dropped, or the switch performance will be impacted. So even at low utilization levels, you can drop packets in an OT environment.
Yeah.
And then final point I'd just like to make, Ire, is that whilst a tap is an additional CapEx cost to somebody, the actual operating cost is less than using SPAN. When you install a tap, it's invisible on the network. It's like a piece of wire. You never have to touch it. You never have to configure it. If you replace a switch, you never have to touch the tap. It's just there. With a SPAN port, if you have to replace a switch, you have to reconfigure the span port. You have this overhead there of configuring and monitoring that switch, because you want to make sure that the performance of the switch is not being impacted by the span port, and that the span port is continually giving 100% of the data. And so therefore you also need a monitoring solution to add to this, to actually just monitor the performance of the switches. So in reality, taps cost no more than using span ports, and they're much simpler, and they're invisible, and they're reliable.
When we start to use Garland tap solutions in a facility, the overall visibility comes very fast. Even though to work with switch span ports is not easy, but with tap solutions, we got the results very fastly, and the downtime is very, very little. We can do it in off hours, and then everything start to work. And SCADA fans, we are feeding lots of packets with the Garland tap solutions. So altogether, to make the whole factory visibility becomes more practical way. That's what my experience in this IoT environments.
Kritik altyapının savunulabilmesi için diğer IT sistemlerden farklı olarak bir pasif izleme çözümlerinin bu sisteme entegre edilmesi gerekiyor. Tabii ki sistemlerin birbirleriyle birlikte çalışması gereken arada işte switch gibi bir takım ara bağlantı cihazları kullanıyoruz ama bu tür cihazlar zaten kendi üzerinde kendi fonksiyonlarını icra ediyorlar. Ama siber güvenlikteki bu sürekli izleme, continuous monitoring diye tanımladığımız yapının oluşabilmesi için bu tür sistemlerin doğasına uygun savunma çözümlerinin entegre edilmesi gerekiyor. Bu konuda tab cihazlarının vazgeçilmez bir çözüm olduğunu burada gerçekten görmek ve bilmek gerekiyor.
Sakarya Üniversitesi Çalıştayımızın 3. katılımcısı Safe Bridge ile beraberiz. Safe Bridge hem IT hem OT altyapılarında bir tatbikat ortamı ve ortamınızın sıkılaştırılması ile ilgili çok gelişmiş senaryolarla beraber atak yapan bir baz platformu olarak Türkiye'de Safe Bridge'i uzun zamandır tanıtıyoruz. Ve Sakarya Üniversitesi'ndeki çalışmalarda da Safe Bridge ekibi bu çalıştaya katıldılar. Ve buradaki su şebekeleri ve enerji şebekeleriyle ilgili çalışmada Safe Bridge'in çok değerli katkılarını şahit olduk. Şimdi yavaş yavaş sözü ben Rob'a bırakacağım ve Rob'un bu çalıştayla ilgili deneyimlerini dinliyor olacağız. Hello Rob, you're welcome.
Hello Ere, thank you very much for inviting me along.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for participating in the Critical Infrastructures National TESTBED Center workshop at Sakarya University. I want to say big thank you to you and your red team, especially Stewart and Matt. SafeBridge really did important work. SafeBridge started OT attack simulations specific to water and energy facilities in Sakarya University by placing the simulators on these networks and then installing the SafeBridge console on-prem. After the installation steps, your team and other valuable unnamed observers performed red teaming activities remotely and physically. And every advanced and complex different attempts were made. As of August 25, we ended red teaming work, but for about 3.5 weeks, we did red teaming activities with SafeBridge and other hidden observers. So finally, we get very highly skilled cyber. With your teams and our observers highly skilled cybersecurity experts. And with the help of SafeBridge platform, we really get extensive, high quality cyber attacks on these platforms. Thank you for your extensive red teaming activities.
Thanks very much for the question, Ere. And just to go back to the experience that we've just had with you, it was an exciting and challenging environment, and we were very pleased to be able to help you and demonstrate the functionality of SafeBreach into OT environments, in specifically the energy and the water treatment facilities that were set up at the Sakarya University. So it was our pleasure to work with you.
BAS platform is a very new technology in our environment. So everyone is familiar with penetration testing. So there is a misunderstanding as a BAS solution is it a penetration test platform. So how does SafeBridge differ from a penetration testing?
A penetration test, or how we differ from penetration testing, is pretty much three differentiators. One is time, one is money, and the other one is scale. The first one to address is time. Typically, penetration tests are very focused on a specific objective at a specific point in time, whether it be linked to compliance, whether this be done once or twice a year. And the scope of work or the objective of that penetration test is to achieve a specific aim. It might be to breach and reach a critical asset. It might be to do a number of things, but they're quite specific, and it is at a specific moment in time, i.e., once that penetration test is completed and the results are determined, that's the end of that exercise. There may be remediation, maybe things to do, but the penetration testers leave, the report is followed up on, and we wait, therefore, until the next time a penetration test is ordered or required. They're also quite expensive because they rely on highly valuable and skilled penetration testers, and this is a manpower issue, and it's done over a number of days, and it can prove to be quite expensive, which is one of the reasons our penetration tests aren't done on a more regular basis. And the final point is scale, and that is that they tend not to cover the full attack surface or the full kill chain. So they're, as I say, they're specific in terms of their aim, and they often can't track such things such as lateral movement or email-based or insider threats, because they would fall outside of the scope of the penetration tester's remit. So if we look at those three things, time, money, and scale, a more affordable route is to deploy an automated solution that provides these attacks continuously, or breach and attack methods continuously, that we can do that, as I say, without the construct of time. We can schedule these to run daily, weekly, monthly, however frequently the organization requires the test to be run. And we can scale. We can cover much more of the attack surface of the organization's network rather than a specific entry point or a specific critical component that they're looking to test against. So that's how we do it. The short answer is we can do penetration testing and we can just automate it, but there are other key components, as I said, in terms of time and scale that makes breach and attack simulation or continuous security validation our reason for being and how we add value to customers. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, for attending our webinar, and thank you and your team for extensive red teaming activities. We are happy to work with you. I hope we will go on to work with other POCs and custom environments, especially in OT environments, because we are getting so many customer offerings requesting how SafeBridge guarantee our OT environments not to break our functionality. This is the proof of concept. So when they watch our activities in Sakarya University, they can understand easily SafeBridge is safely penetrate and continuously penetrate their OT environment. So it's a good solution. I can say.
Superb. No, as I say, it was our pleasure to support you, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to demonstrate the platform along with OTD.
Please tell us from your own side what kind of attacks that you discovered in this event. What can you say?
It's a really, really good question, actually. So on average, our team was detecting close to like 600 to 700 attacks per day. This event went on for quite a while. So obviously, I won't be talking about tens of thousands of of different types of attacks that were discovered, but we've been around for a while. We've been around almost a decade. So we've seen a lot of different types of attacks and a lot of different vulnerabilities. So I'm going to focus today on three main categories. And I'll share with you some of the attacks that the attackers were doing. Of course, we will have an additional session where we're able to show a lot of the screenshots, and of course there will be documentation. But let's talk about the most interesting part, the first part, the denial of service attacks. So one of the first things I want to mention is a SYN flood denial of service. This is one of several common vulnerabilities, and what the attackers do is they take advantage of TCP and IP in order to overwhelm the target systems. They try to knock down the target systems and try to make them basically not be able to respond. And that's really, really good if you're trying to knock down the electricity of a facility, or if you want to try knocking down some processes. The second type of denial of service that we saw was actually HTTP flood denial of service. So it's very similar to a DDoS or a distributed denial of service attack, which the attackers exploit, legitimate HTTP, either GET or POST requests in order to attack a web server or an application. So this was one of the very interesting types of attacks that we've seen. Now, the second category that I want to speak about is actually scans. Think about it. Attackers, whenever they go into a network, they want to understand what's going on, and they have special tools that they use in order to scan or to see what it is that they have on the network, right? So one of the first things that we saw them trying to use was an Nmap NSE. NSE stands for an Nmap scripting engine. It's a very common scan for attackers to do in order to understand what's inside the network. Another type of scan that they tried to do was Nmap OS fingerprinting. This is how attackers use, they send a series of TCP and UDP packets in order to a remote host, and then they examine practically every bit inside of the responses that they get from it. And the other scan was they used a TCP SYN scan, which is another common tactic that malicious attackers use in order to see what is the state of a communications port, and they're able to do this without having to establish a full connection. So we saw a lot of interesting types of scans, and of course these were all detected by the platform, and we let of course, this is part of our blue team. We let them know. We let the white team know that this was what was happening. And then afterwards, there were actually attacks. So there's 5 attacks that we're going to get into. One of them was a path traversal attacks. This is an attack that attackers use in order to try to access files and directories that are stored outside of the web root folder. They also used another directory traversal attack using the HTTP protocol, which was pretty interesting. They used another traversal vulnerability called Apache HTTP. This is something that they use in order to map URLs to files outside of the directories. Another vulnerability that the attackers tried to exploit was the zero logon exploit. That's a critical vulnerability that specifically affects Windows servers. This vulnerability can allow an attacker to bypass authentication, and then they could get administrator level privileges in a matter of seconds. And finally, this was an attack that we saw a lot of. We saw a lot of brute force attacks using Kerberos. So during this type of attack, an attacker feeds like an entire list of commonly used passwords or like a dictionary into like a cracking program. And we've seen thousands of attempts of this in our platform. There's a lot of brute force. Sometimes they were even able to get in. But the most interesting for us were the denial of service attacks. Again, these are top-notch red teams, and we've done many exercises. I have to say kudos to the team for putting together a tremendous laboratory. They've invested tens of thousands of dollars putting together really nice networks for water, for electricity, really good appliances in there. And ultimately, the attackers were also really first class.
Yeah, great. What can I say also? In addition to your attack types, I have seen they have tried to inject industrial Trojan inside the facility, and even they tried it from the beginning. I can see every steps in the Mitra attack framework. This is also very interesting. We don't stop them. So they did every step one by one, and we watched them step by step. So the impact is also interesting. They cut off the electricity of the some points of the facility. So SCADA Defense from the beginning at the end showed every steps. This is the important point, I think, because we are passively monitoring the environment, but we are giving huge information at that moment. And this is the cybersecurity point is, I think, the value of SCADA Defense, that can I say.
Burada kısaca ben size göstermek isterim aslında. Hem Safe Bridge hem iki Red Team ekiplerinin oluşturduğu trafikler ve atakların neticelerini burada görebiliyorsunuz. Mesela bu su sisteminin dataları. Burada 1252 alert oluşmuş. 130 civarında bir aset tespit edilmiş. Bunun haricinde bir de networklerinin map'ini de çıkartabiliyorsunuz. Bu çok önemli. Bir topolojiyi çizmek, araştırmayı yapmak gerçekten çok zor. Bu yönde SCADA Defense bize elimiz, ayağımız, kolumuz oluyor aslında. Gördüğünüz üzere kim kimle nasıl konuşmuş, bunların hepsini burada detaylıca görebiliyorsunuz. Bildiğiniz üzere OT networklerinde layer'lar var. Layer'lar seviyesinde de tüm ilişkileri burada hızlıca analiz edebiliyorsunuz. Bu ne için önemli? Herhangi bir atak olduğu vakit nereden girildi, nereye doğru yayılıyor, bunları hızlıca buralarda tespit etmek mümkün.
Session'ın ilerleyen süreçlerinde bir yeni çözümümüzü daha Sakarya Üniversitesi TESTBED Merkezi'nde deneme şansına eriştik. Değişik bir çözüm. Bu da bizim uzun zamandır araştırdığımız bir konuydu. Birçok müşterimiz bu anlamda bizden böyle bir recovery çözümü hızlı bir şekilde ortamdaki endüstriyel cihazların backup'larını hızlı bir şekilde almakla ilgili çok ciddi bir operasyonel sorun yaşadıklarını iletiyorlardı. Ve biz bunlarla ilgili araştırmamızı yaparken Salvador Teknoloji'de tanıştık. Ve onlarla distribütörlük anlaşmamızı yaparak ilk çalışmamızda onları davet ettik. Onlar da bizi kırmadılar ve bu çalıştaya katılarak bizlerle birlikte bir POC sürecinde Salvador Teknoloji'nin ürünlerini gösterdiler. Endüstriyel networklerde biliyorsunuz fidye ataklarla çok karşılaşıyoruz ve burası işletmenin yumuşak karnı olduğu için de bu cihazlara doğru yapılan saldırılar sonucu bu cihazların tekrar operasyona dönme hızı oldukça uzun sürebiliyor. O yüzden çok hızlı bir recovery çözümü olarak biz Salvador Teknoloji'yi Türkiye'ye ve globalde de pazarlamaya başladık. Bu ürünün tanıtımını ilk defa yapıyoruz. Bizim için de çok yeni bir ürün ve biz de çok etkilendik. Sizlerin de çok önemli, dikkatini çekeceğini düşünüyorum. Çünkü şu an için o endüstriyel networkler içerisindeki HMI ve Windows tabanlı workstation'larınızı çok hızlı bir şekilde backuplıyor ve akabinde de 30 saniye gibi sürede inanılmaz bir şekilde geri dönüyor. Bu bir işletmenin gerçekten operasyonel işleyişi için çok ciddi bir kazanım. Çok hızlı bir şekilde karşılaşabileceğiniz siber saldırılarla ilgili bir backup recovery çözümü olarak önümüze gelmiş bulunuyor. Öncelikle bu patentli ürün için Salvador Teknoloji'ye çok teşekkür ediyoruz ve ben bu çözümü hem burada POC sırasında beraber çalıştığımız Amos'la kendisini tanıştırmak istiyorum ve kendisinden de bu konuyla ilgili çözümle ilgili bize bilgilendirmesi amacıyla bazı sorular yönelteceğim. Hi Amos, you welcome.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, Amos Alfon is VP Sales the Director of the EMEA region. Thank you for joining our Sakarya University TESTBED Environment Cybersecurity Workshop. So, Amos, please tell us your amazing products. We are very happy to introduce your solution in this workshop. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Really, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. We are talking about really an amazing product based on a special patent using the air gap technology. We're talking about fast recovery from a cyber attack, or in the case that you have any crisis in your production, you can retrieve, you can boot your environments, continue the work in 30 seconds. This is the whole idea.
Yeah, when I heard 30 seconds, first of all, I don't believe what kind of technology is that, but I see with my eyes, it was really recovering in 30 seconds. It's really amazing.
Exactly. What we did basically, what we are doing basically, we are copying the whole entire disk completely to our device in 3 times, so we can avoid any malware, we can avoid any problems in our devices. So if you have any problem with your original disk, with your HMI environments, you can always shut down, boot from our device in 30 seconds and continue working like nothing happened. The same production.
So we are a cybersecurity company, and I have a question about for security manner. How do you avoid a backup of the virus?
First of all, we have 3 copies. So we are using what we call factory reset or factory zero. When the system is completely clean and your environment is built in the first time, we are making a copy of the entire disk, the operation system, the whole drivers, application, etc., and we copy it to the first disk. And then we make the disk will be out of the connection and it will never connect again. So in the case that there is any malware or something will copied by anyhow to the other disks, you always can boot from the factory reset, and then you can avoid, in the case, you can go back to the original disk.
How do I perform recovery exercises for my company? Can you please tell this point?
Yeah, absolutely. For your company, when you have production and you would like to continue your work, and suddenly you have any hacker that attacking your environment, the HMI or the whole network, and have access to your network, there is 2 types of activities the hacker likes to do: to send malware, and then the malware will completely make a damage, will stop the whole production. Or sometimes they're using BitLocker, the regular functions from the Windows. They are activating the BitLocker, and then they will completely lock the environments. And then they start to negotiate to get money. In our case, our device is completely isolated. Even it's connected to the system and making the backup with our tools, and the hacker cannot see the device, is completely isolated. We are using air gap to avoid those disks to be connected, only one disk to be connected to make the backup. And in this way, the hackers cannot attack our device, they cannot control it, and can be ready for boot in 30 seconds and continue the production immediately. So this is the way that we can help you in the production if there is any hacker attacking you.
How do you deal with an APT virus?
Basically, what we are trying to do is to avoid copying we're checking if there is any virus using a honeypot spot puts in the agent on the computer on the HMI. We are checking there is no virus that we are copying. In the case there is any virus or any attack, we will stop it. So we are using 3 disks in the way that those disks will be always clean and there is no virus. If there is any virus that copied, we will allow you to boot from the other 2 devices. So you always have at least 1 or 2 disks in our side that clean and can be bootable without the virus.
You know, there are other disaster recovery systems we have heard about with good brands, but in OT side, this is the first time I heard such a disaster recovery solution. How it differs from the other DR systems? Can you explain this, please?
Yeah, just to continue the previous question, just let you know, when the hackers is attacking the device, usually they are blocking the whole environment. We are blocking the access to our device. In this way, we are not allowing the hacker to access and to attack and to have the virus in our side via the USB. There is no way to access to our devices. Only our agents can do that with the air gap. Now, the other recovery or disaster systems are connected all the time, and they are accessible in somehow to the, let's say, to the hackers. So those recovery or the recovery systems are very connected, can be accessible to the hackers. If there's any problem, usually it's become very difficult to protect or to boot from those devices because they are accessible. In our case, we are completely using air gap. We're isolated, so nobody no hacker can attack us. So this is the way that we are completely different. We are fast recovery, and we are different from the other regular disaster systems.
Şu anki çalışmamızda Salvador Teknoloji'nin Backup Restore cihazı, şurada gördüğünüz üzere gayet küçük, 512 GB'lık bir ürün. Bunun özelliği var olan PC'nin, daha doğrusu Windows tabanlı tüm ürünlerin, bu OT tarafında bir HMI de olabilir, tümünün backup'ının hızlıca alınıp çok kısa bir sürede de restore'unun yapılması özelliğine sahip. Gördüğünüz üzere üzerinde 2 tane tuş var. Bu tuşlarla sistemi yönetebiliyorsunuz. Burada ben backup'ını hızlıca aldım. Şimdi restore testlerini deneyeceğiz. Yapmamız gereken, restart ettikten sonra cihazı boot'tan birinci boot'u Salvador olarak seçiyoruz. Ve save edip boot'u Salvador'dan yapıyoruz. Evet, gördüğünüz üzere çok kısa bir sürede restore'u tamamladık.
Great solution. Thank you, Mr. Ramos, for your
Thank you very much.
detailed informations. Nice to meet you, and we will happy to see you in Istanbul in the next fairs. You're welcome.
Teşekkür. Thank you very much.
Teşekkürler.